Hi friends, I am Gopal Chandra Jha. I welcome you to my educational channel, AG English tutorial. I am going to start a new series of videos on the topic of voice. I am going to present it in three parts. The first part is before you. Let's go for it. Let us see what is in the first part. Voice. Look at the groups of sentences given below. First sentence, Rama kills Ravana. The second sentence, Ravana is killed by Rama. Here we see that both these sentences express the same meaning. The meaning given by these sentences is the same. They give the same meaning. Rama kills Ravana, Ravana is killed by Rama. Meaning is the same. But in sentence first, we see that the form of the verb kills shows that the person denoted by the subject does something. Hence, the subject Rama is called the doer of the action. Here, the doer is more important than the action. In such a case, the verb is said to be in the active voice. Let us see in the first sentence, the doer denoted by Rama. Rama is the doer. So, the doer denoted by the subject does something. He kills Ravana. Therefore, actually the form of the verb shows that the doer denoted by the subject Rama does something. Therefore, this verb is said to be in the active voice because the doer denoted by the subject does something. The verb shows, the form of the verb shows that the doer denoted by the subject does something. So, this verb is said to be in the active voice. Here, in active voice, the doer is more important than the action. Now let us see what is there in sentence second. In sentence second, the form of the verb shows that the person denoted by the subject does not do anything but something is done to him. Here the action is more important than the doer. In such a case, the verb is said to be in the passive voice. Let us see what is in sentence second. Ravana is killed by Rama. In this sentence, the form of the verb shows that the person denoted by the subject does not do anything, but something is done to him. Actually, the person denoted by the subject is not the doer of this sentence. In the first sentence, the subject, the person denoted by the subject is the doer because he does something, he kills Ravana. But in the second sentence, the form of the verb shows that the person denoted by Ravana is not the person denoted by the subject is not the doer of the action. The doer of the action is someone else. The doer is Rama. Okay, Ravana is not the doer. So when the subject is the doer, when the person denoted by the subject does something, the verb is said to be in the active voice, and when the person denoted by the subject is not the doer, that is when it does not do anything, the verb is said to be in the passive voice. In the active voice, the doer is more important than the action, and in the passive voice, the action is more important than the doer. Now, definition of voice. Voice is the form of the verb which shows whether the doer denoted by the subject does something or something is done to it. Voice is the form of the verb which shows that whether the doer denoted by the subject does something or something is done to it. In other words, we can say that voice is the form of verb which shows whether doer is more important in a sentence or the action. When the doer is more important, the verb is said to be in the active voice, and when the action is more important, the verb is said to be in the passive voice. Now let us go for kinds of voice. There are two kinds of voice: active voice and passive voice. So what is active voice? We have already discussed that when the doer denoted by the subject does something, the verb is said to be in the active voice. So let us see here also. A verb is said to be in the active voice when its form shows that the doer denoted by the subject does something. In such a case, the doer is more important than the action. Examples are: Arpit writes a story, Radha sings a song, Aman is watching TV, Manohar has won the race, he will buy a car. In these examples, Arpit is the doer in the first example, Arpit writes a story. In the second sentence, Radha sings a song, Radha is the doer. In the third sentence, Aman is watching TV, so Aman is the doer. In the fourth sentence, Manohar has won the race, so Manohar is the doer. In the fifth sentence, he will buy a car, so he is the doer. So here, the form of the verb shows that the doer denoted by the subject does something. Okay, the doer, the subject is the doer. The subject of the sentence is the doer. Okay, so the verb used in these sentences, the verbs used in these sentences are said to be in the active voice because its form shows that the person denoted by the subject does the work. Now, in passive voice, a verb is said to be in the passive voice when its form shows that the doer denoted by the subject does not do anything but something is done to it. In such a case, the action is more important than the doer. We have already seen that in active voice, the Doer is more important, and voice the action is more important. Now let us see some examples. A story is written by Arpit. Here, a story is written by Arpit. Here, the work is done by Arpit, not by the subject of the sentence. The subject is not the doer. In this sentence, the subject of the sentence is not the doer. Okay, a story is not the doer. The doer is Arpit. Yeah, but the doer is not important. The action is important here. A story is read by Arpit. Then, in the second sentence, a song is sung by Radha. Here, the subject is not the doer. Doer is Radha, which is not the subject of this sentence. So, when the form of the verb is such that shows that the subject is not the doer, but the doer is someone else, and the doer does something for the subject of the sentence, the verb is said to be in the passive voice. TV is being watched by Aman. TV is not watching, but TV is being watched by Aman. Aman is watching TV. TV is not watching anything. Aman is watching TV. So TV is being watched by Aman. This is in passive voice. The race has been won by Manohar. A car will be bought by him. Let us see some more examples. Active voice and passive voice. In active voice we have Ram writes a letter. In passive, a letter is written by Ram. In active we have eaten a cake. In passive we have a cake is eaten by us. In active voice we have they tore the pages. In passive we have the pages were torn by them. In active we have she will love her baby. In passive we have the baby will be loved by her. Now how to form passive voice. How to form passive voice. See the following example. Active voice. In active voice we have Sachin plays cricket. In active voice we have Sachin plays cricket. In passive voice we have cricket is played by Sachin. So the subject of the active voice, the subject in the active voice becomes object in the passive voice. And the object of the active voice become subject in the passive voice. Okay. Sachin plays cricket. Cricket is played by Sachin. You can say the doer has been placed after by. By is a preposition. In the active voice, Sachin is the doer. And cricket is the object. And in the passive voice, cricket becomes subject. The object of the active voice becomes subject. And the subject of the active voice become object. Preceded by, preceded by the preposition by, and the form of the verb changes according to the tense. Since plays is in simple present tense, So is played has been used here. Okay, is played has been used here. Is played. Is played has been used here. Now let us see rules of changing from active to passive voice. What are the rules of changing from active to passive voice? The following rules are observed while changing active voice into passive voice. The object in the active voice becomes subject in the passive voice. Yes, that we have seen. The object in the active voice becomes subject in the passive voice. You can see cricket becomes subject, which is object in the active voice. Then the subject in the active voice becomes object in the passive voice and is generally placed preceded by the preposition by. Yes, the subject, you can see the subject becomes object and it is preceded by the preposition by. Now, third, the verb is changed into the past participle form and is preceded by some form of verb to be. Verb to be means am, is, are, was, were, be, been. So, the verb is changed into its past participle, that is be3, and it is preceded by verb to be, that is a helping verb like am, is, are, was, were, etc. And one more thing that must be kept in mind, that while changing a sentence from active to passive, the tense of the sentence, the tense of the verb does not change. The tense remains as it is. Now, how the verb changes? Let us see some examples. How the verb changes. Here we have tense, then verb in active voice, then verb in passive voice. In simple present tense, we have write and writes in the active voice. In passive, it becomes am, is, are, written. In present continuous tense, we have am, is, are, writing, am writing, is writing, are writing. But in the passive, it becomes am, is, are being written. If you only understand this table, you will be able to change active voice into passive voice very easily. The summary of this chapter lies here. The summary of this chapter lies here. You must understand it properly. Present perfect tense. In the present perfect tense, in the active voice we have has, have, written. But in the passive voice we have has, have, been written. Then in simple past tense, the verb is wrote. It becomes was, were, written in the passive voice. Then in past continuous tense, in the active voice, the verb is was, were, writing. Was writing or were writing. That in passive voice changes was, were, writing. In active voice we have was, were, writing. That in passive voice changes was, were, being written. Now past perfect tense. We have had written. In active voice, had written. In passive voice it becomes had been written. Now Now in simple future tense, we have will or shall write. In passive voice, it becomes will or shall be written. Then future perfect tense, let us see. In future perfect tense, the verb in the active voice is will or shall have written. Will have written or shall have written. This verb will change into will have been written or shall have been written. Now modal verbs am, can, will, etc. plus main verb. So the modal verbs preceded by the main verb. So when a modal verb is preceded by the main verb, this is the form in the passive voice. When in the active voice, a modal verb is preceded by the main verb. Here the modal verb may, can, will, these are being preceded by the verb write in the active voice. So in the passive voice, its form becomes may, can, will, etc. be written. May, can, will, may be written, can be written, will be written. Now let us see when to use passive voice. When passive voice should be used. The passive voice is used when number one, the action denoted by the verb is more important than the person who has done it. When the action is more important than the person who has done it. Example, the wall has been painted. The problem has been solved. There are many examples where the doer is not important, only the action is important. Now in number second we have the speaker or writer does not know who is the doer. Who the doer is. This bridge was constructed in 2015, but we don't know who is the doer. Then number third, when the doer wants to make an objective reporting, such as in report writing or process writing. So when the doer wants to make an objective reporting, he does not want to include himself. He does not want to say anything about his experience or his feeling. Okay. He makes an impartial reporting, such as in science labs. In science labs, we always find an objective reporting. A flask is, we find in science classes, we always find a flask is let us see one second. In science classes, we always find a flask is taken, it is filled up with a little sulfuric acid, etc. So when an objective reporting is required to be done, passive voice is used. In my next, so today in the first part of voice, only this much. And now in the next part, that is voice part second, I will resume my class from here and I will teach from sentence wise formation of passive voice. And then we shall study voice tense wise. We shall do tense wise study of voice. So thank you very much. Before leaving the channel, like it, share it and subscribe it. Thank you very much.